Thank you. All right.
Announce.
We are now recording. It is March 25th, 2021 at 6:02 p.m. This is the City of Clemson Police Advisory Board meeting. We are on a new platform here, so hopefully we'll be able to get through this and everybody will be able to see what's going on. It is being live streamed on the Zoom platform, and a copy of this meeting will be uploaded to the City of Clemson's YouTube channel in probably about a day or so. Looking at, okay, we have two people who are going to present today. I'm just making sure that they're getting into the meeting. All right, so I guess we'll start, Madam Chair, with a roll call. You want me to call the roll?
That'll be just fine.
Okay, so we heard from the chair, Margaret Thompson is there. Lisa Robinson.
Present.
Jeffrey Roberts texted me and said he's going to be a little bit late, but he'll be on later. Eunice Ledmarker.
Here.
Sorry if I mutilated your name. Sarah Williams.
Here.
Dr. King.
Present.
Kevin Dole, I know, is having difficulties connecting. I don't know if he's able to get in. And Ryan Dean.
I'm here.
Okay, Madam Chair, do you call the meeting to order?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Good evening, everybody. We'll get started. Since we've done the roll call, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All right. Next
So
item is approval.
Everybody, you gotta take the poll. Everybody agrees?
I didn't hear any nays.
Okay, well, okay, so if that's the way you're doing it, you just need to state if there's any nays. Good.
Anybody opposed to the approval of the agenda? Hear none. All right, moving on, approval of previous meetings. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Yes or no? Hearing no's, we'll move on to number 5, citizens' comments. Is there anybody on the line? Is that what this is for, Chief, in case
Yep.
somebody calls in?
Yes, ma'am. And in this, before we had a number for them to call, but here they would just sign in, or if they called, they would show up as an attendee. And right now, I do not see anyone in the attendees list, so I'll keep an eye on it. And if somebody comes on later on, I'll let you know.
Thank you, sir. All right, department status, I guess that would be you, Chief. Let you take it away.
Yes, ma'am. So we have 3 vacancies for sworn office in the department. 2 are for sworn officers, 1 for administrative assistant. We advertised for both. We received, I think, 19 applications for police officer that we're going through. I received 31 applications for the administrative assistant we're going through right now. So the officers are in an initial background phase. We're making sure that they qualify. They don't have any felony convictions on their record or anything like that. And after that is, we'll also look at their social media history and check with the Law Enforcement Academy to make sure that they're qualified before we move forward with the internal process, which includes a physical agility test, interview board. And those are the 2 internal things. And if they get through that, then there's additional medical evaluation, psychological evaluation, so on and so forth. So that'll be definitely a few-week process. We're right in the middle of budget season and the budget process. We have, we'll be submitting items for our increments. Some of the things that I'm asking for are, I think I talked about this before, but tasers. None of our officers carry tasers, and it gives our officers another option, use of force option that's less than lethal. Our body worn cameras that we have, I put this on the list only that we are always looking to increase the functionality of our body worn cameras. The body worn cameras we have now are not made by Axon. If you've seen the articles out of Greenville, where Greenville's going to the Axon body camera, how it integrates with the taser, how it integrates with the vehicle, how it integrates with the weapons when they draw the weapons. the body worn cameras that we have don't do all that functionality, and it's basically a cost issue. My goal in future years, as we're upgrading our body worn cameras, that we move to that, but it's very expensive, definitely outside of our financial reach right now. We're asking, I know Ryan and I had a conversation earlier about the radio system that we use. We do need to buy a piece of equipment commonly referred to as a repeater to put on a tower on the northeastern side of town. We affectionately call the Berkeley hump kind of a dead area for our radios. So once you get past Berkeley, moving in towards Central, there's a kind of a lull there that we have intermittent radio reception. So we're going to be asking for funding for that. Also, with the very young staff that I have here, asking for travel and training money, more so than what we have, so that we can get our younger, less experienced officers to more training for improved skills and to keep up the standards that we keep our officers to. I've participated in and continue to participate in the community leader forum put on by a local sorority group that's getting law enforcement together to talk with members of the community to promote community policing efforts and to have ongoing discussions with different areas of the community. The last forum, I know member Robinson was part of. Lisa, if you want to speak a little bit more about the group, you can.
Yeah, so I was invited to attend that meeting by Councilwoman Smith, Alicia Smith, and it was a collaboration of a range of different community leaders discussing any policing issues. There were representatives, I think representatives of all of the forces in our immediate area, Tri-County area, were invited. A collaboration between Tri-County, Texas, and cities of Clemson, and I think maybe Anderson was invited as well, and perhaps Easley, and maybe even Seneca as well, and just to address any particular policing issues that the community may have. The intention behind that is to then decide to have community forums where members of the community would be able to come in and, you know, address questions or voice concerns or issues to law enforcement in our area. So that meeting was pretty well attended. A lot of good discussion just surrounding, you know, general policing issues, citizen concerns. So I think that's something that'll be welcomed in the community, opening it up to other community members.
And this is Eunice. I was at the meeting too. It was all of Pickens County, and another meeting will be held in Anderson County and Oconee County with the law enforcement and the community leaders of those respective counties in the coming weeks, with the community forums to talk about policing then later in the spring.
Well, thank you both. I will try to remember to forward any more public discussions for that group to this group. And Lisa and Eunice, I'll ask you to help me out with that. Feel free to share it so that if anyone else wants to attend or sit in and listen to what's going on, I would advocate for that. So moving on, we had in-service training last month, a couple of weeks ago, and the topics that were covered were ethics. We have to annually go over our ethics, our bias-based policing, policies and practices and things to be concerned with and address. We also went over some critical incident training to keep our folks up to date with what the different levels are and how we go forward. And then finally, we did some training on the flock system. This is the automatic license plate reader system that the university has. And then some of the other area cities have, and how our staff can use it for investigative purposes. So that was pretty much it. The only other thing I have is if you've been by our department lately, you may have noticed that there's a lot of construction debris all over the place. That is because we are expanding the department. We're building a new building behind us, and then we'll be renovating the building that we're in now. So we've had a lot of internal challenges and logistical challenges, dealing with noise and dust and getting in and out of our own building, and not having any air conditioning, which thank God it's cool out right now, but we're still, we'll be doing that here for probably at least the next year or so. So that's the department status. Any questions?
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the crime review, Chief.
All right, I forwarded the crime review to all of you ahead of time, so you had opportunity to look at it. I'm going to share my screen for the public. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, here's our crime and traffic report. For last month, the month of February, 3 assault and batteries, 3 domestic violence, no sexual assaults or robbery. Our domestic violence cases increased compared to January, but decreased prior years. Assault and batteries also decreased. And our arrests made for crimes against persons were 3 for the month of February. Our property crimes reported, the larceny, I'm sorry, I do not know what MDPP stands for. I think it's
Motor vehicle.
I'm not sure. I'd have to ask. The motor vehicle thefts are 2. The MDPP, I think, has something to do with impersonating someone else. Motor vehicle break-ins, 21, burglary 1. Deborah is raising her hand here. I can't see her right now. Hold on a second.
You click on her and make her a panelist. She and Deborah can both come in.
All right, Deborah, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, sir.
All
I was
right,
going to just say MDPP stands for malicious destruction to personal property. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, that's my fault of not grasping what South Carolina calls different things. We called that criminal mischief in Florida. So, okay, motor vehicle theft decreased in February, and our motor vehicle break-ins increased. And then we've made 1 arrest. I know we have multiple suspects on the motor vehicle break-ins that we're currently following up on right now. Before I go to the traffic report along those lines, I know that we've gotten warrants recently on a couple of individuals. Like I said, we were talking about the multiple break-ins. So recently, in the month of March, and we'll report it again, but we did get 2 arrest warrants for Eric Brooks, who from Seneca came into Clemson and broke into a couple of, I think, 3 vehicles we charged him with. Some financial identity fraud suspects, and we got a couple of warrants from them on a Nathaniel Young, in which he obtained the identity of someone and used, ran a bunch of credit accounts up in that victim's information. And then we have a breach of trust with fraudulent intent, where the victim saw an ad on Craigslist and was defrauded out of $500. So our detectives are working hard on solving those. Let's see, no questions there. Our traffic report: 9 hit and runs, 12 driving while under suspension, and 2 DUIs. 146 traffic tickets issued. We had 71 collisions that we investigated. Made 18 under possession under 21 alcohol charges. 3 social host violation tickets. And I want to emphasize this: we took a lot of flack during the COVID time period that we were using the emergency ordinances to go after private parties and going after people for having parties at home. There's only 3 that we issued last month. So what was being reported was not true. We did still respond to them. And I will say, in those 3 cases, it's not because there's too many people there. It's because there's alcohol there, there's people underage, there's a lot of other things going on. that would cause us to issue a citation for this. We have 10 possession of drug or paraphernalia charges last month. Any questions on the report? Okay.
Time to move on to, for Ms. Shockley.
Yes, Deborah, you should have the ability to present. Are you able to? Oh, I have to promote you to a panelist. Hold on. All right, Deborah, you have the floor. Deborah, can you hear me?
I can now. Can you hear me, sir?
I can.
Okay. So my name is Deborah Shockley. I am with Clemson Police Department. I am one of 2 civilian employees that they have here. I am the victim services provider. I am also the crime analyst here. I also have a dog that I work with here, and he's our therapy dog. So we have a therapy team here. And I also help with the community outreach at the police department. I've been doing victim services since 2006, and Ozzy and I have been trained as a therapy team since 2018. My primary role here is the victim services coordinator. So in our state, we've come a long way since victim rights started in the 70s. So in the last 45 years, our state has actually done a pretty good job at keeping up and trying to adhere to victim rights, giving them certain laws that we can work under to protect them. We still have a long way to go, but I will say in my last, 15 years of doing this, I've seen it come a long way, and I'm excited to be a part of that. Some of you may know, several of you look familiar to me, so several of you probably know and understand. Victims have the right to be heard in our state. They have the right to be treated fairly. They have the right to be present during any criminal proceedings. They have the right to seek restitution, which would be if somebody damaged their property or stole their property. So they have all of those rights. And my main job here is to make sure that our department adheres to those rights and those laws so that we don't have any problems. We like to call what we have here at Clemson, it's victim-centered and survivor-led. I myself am a victim. I was a victim of an assault and battery, high and aggravated, back when I was 16 years old. I've also been a victim of a petty larceny that didn't affect me near as much as the assault and battery, but that definitely lit the fire under me and wanted me to help others. So I think that helps me a lot with my role here, because I have that role, that part of empathy. And I'm able to help a lot of times just because I do partially understand what someone may be going through. With our therapy dog, I go to the retirement homes here in Clemson. We visit with the retirees and the citizens and residents. We also do community outreach events together. He is a great icebreaker. People may not like to talk to the officers because they have on a badge and a gun, but they have no problem running up to that puppy and loving on him. I've used him with several domestic violence victims. I've also used him with several of our sexual assault victims, a couple of child abuse victims. So he has definitely been a huge part for us here in Clemson. We were the first one in the state to get certified as that. Greenville County came in quickly thereafter. We actually trained together. So Greenville County has that therapy team working as well. As of 2020, there were 5 other therapy department dogs in police departments throughout our state. So it's really taken on and going out there, and people I think are seeing that it's working very well. Does anybody have any questions about the victim services role?
Deborah, this is Margaret. How's Ozzy doing?
He's doing great.
How old is he now?
He's 3.
He's 3.
Yes,
You were talking about on restitution, going back to the victims.
yes, ma'am.
How often? What's the percentage of that actually happens that the victim does receive restitution?
I would say up until 2020, Margaret, it was a pretty high rate. And the reason was if restitution was ordered by court and not paid, I could alert the court to that and bench warrants were issued for noncompliance. However,
Okay. All right. But did they ever, do you know from follow-up, because kind of how that works, they'll get rearrested and promise to do it again, but do the victims ever actually receive any kind of compensation?
I would say a good many of them do, to be honest. I'm pretty hard. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in court with me or not, but I'm pretty hard set on my victims should get back what was taken from them as much as humanly possible. And our city judges are actually really good at taking any money that the defendant pays toward their fine. It goes to the victim first. Does that make sense? So the city does not take their fine money, does not take any money. We send it, if they are owed restitution, that restitution comes out of that money first.
Well, I think you do a great job, and I know Ozzy, being around Ozzy and everything, he's definitely a heartbreaker, that's for sure.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Any other questions about the victim services part of what I do?
Hey, Deborah, you said until 2020. What, did something happen in 2020 or?
Yes, ma'am. Unfortunately, COVID also affected our criminal justice system in some negative ways. I'm sure you saw the headlines where they released a certain percentage of population of the jails to try to decrease the population to prevent the spread of COVID. So unfortunately, if you were in there on a bench warrant, if you were in there on minor crime or anything like that, you were one of the lucky few who got out because of COVID, and that definitely affected the effectiveness of a bench warrant and the effectiveness of a court order at that point, as far as my victim's view was concerned. At this point in our court, we still have not started back yet. We plan to start back. I think our first date is March 31st with regular bench trials. However, our judges are now told by the Chief Justice that they cannot issue a bench warrant for non-payment of restitution. I am hoping that is something that will go back into effect later on in the state, but as of right now, that is something that my judges cannot do.
Yeah, they're gonna drag it out, that's for sure.
It's been a heartbreaking situation for a lot of my victims. It's very hard for them to understand why certain people are released, and I can completely understand the frustrations.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Margaret. Any other questions about that, the victim services? Okay, so real brief, I'm trying to go quick for you. So the other part of what I do here is crime analyst. So I went to New York, took a 2-week course, got tested, got certified. So I'm also a certified crime analyst for the city of Clemson. What that entails is I come in daily. I pay really close attention to reports as far as when a car break-in may be reported. Was it a forced entry? I kind of try to come up with patterns. I've got some GIS software that I use, as well as a crime mapping program that I use to try to map these occurrences to try to come up with hot spots or areas that I see, okay, there's a lot more crime occurring in zone 3. What could be our possibilities? What could possibly going on here? So I'll actually go out there, the officers will go out as well, and it's called crime prevention through environmental design. So we kind of look, are there, scooter attachments, is there a place for them to lock up their mopeds safely? Is it a dark area? Is it something we could try to suggest lighting? Anything like that we could come up with. And then it also works twofold, because then the officers, the command staff, can direct the officers, okay, you need to do a little extra patrol out in this area during this particular time, because we're seeing an increase. I know I watched, I think it was last month's meeting, and that was a concern, was car break-ins. So, I mean, they had officers, we had people working overtime, just doing targeted patrols to try and to put that under control. So I also send out monthly reports to all the property managers in Clemson. So if they own like apartments, if they own a lot of houses, rental houses, townhouses, things like that, I send them out a report every month, just trying to let them know what's going on in our city, what's going on in their actual apartments or rental property. Also, if I see a string of car break-ins, if I see, anything like that, we've created these little hang tags, and the officers, as part of their canvas in the area and investigating it, will put those hang tags out, just saying, hey, there's been this crime in your area. Please do this to help, whether it be lock your door, turn on your porch light, anything like that. So that's pretty much the crime analyst part. I'm also the one who puts together that little crime report and trend that Chief does for y'all every month. So if it's ever wrong or you don't like it, you can completely blame me. I'm completely to blame for that. So I apologize. And third, last thing that I do, and I absolutely love, is the community outreach and education. So a lot of people don't even know what victim rights are. Most people have never even heard of a victim services coordinator or a victim advocate, whatever term you want to use, until it's too late and they're in the middle of a crime, they've been victimized, and they don't know what to do next. So I really like to get out in the community and make sure that everybody knows what to do next, that there are resources available. Luckily, you know, with what I do, I've got my hand pretty much in everything in the city as far as resources that are available, and I try to link everybody as much as I can. Luckily, because I do this solely and it's my primary focus, if I've got a victim, I reach out to every victim that I have in the city of Clemson. And when I use the word victim, it's an individual. The technical definition is an individual who has suffered or may suffer a loss as a result of the harm of someone else, whether it be a physical harm, an emotional harm, or a physical, like, property harm. So I kind of come in at the beginning. I respond to crime scenes, and I try to wrap them up in as much bubble wrap as I can and try to help them through that process to get them at a point where we can start peeling off that bubble wrap and get them back to where they were so they can become a survivor rather than a victim. Anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah, Ms. Shockley, this is Lisa Robinson. I have a question for you.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for all of the work that you're doing. It's really important work. I'm just wondering, what other social service agencies or local agencies do you regularly partner with as part of your work?
Okay, so it really depends on the crime type. So if we're talking sexual assault cases for a citizen, say a non-student, primarily I'm going to work with Pickens County Advocacy Center. They are a wonderful resource for those people, the survivors. If we are talking domestic violence, I use Safe Harbor as a huge resource. If they live in Anderson, I use Foothill Alliance. If I have a family who may be homeless for whatever reason, I'll connect them with either Family Promise or with Dream Center. If I've got a person who has had to pay funeral bills for someone who was murdered or was severely injured and had to go to the hospital, there's something called the Department of Crime Victim Compensation. It's based out of Columbia, but it's available to my victims and survivors as well. So I actually will work with them to fill out an application to try to get them paid back for that. You know, I pretty much anything. There's also, we've got Clemson, oh my gosh, Clemson Community Cares. You know, I work with the Clemson Counseling Center. I work with Title IX office over at the university. That's where I'll typically refer my victims that are, you know, victims that are students to work there, or with CAPS, or now the university actually just started very recently, within the last couple of weeks, they've hired a interpersonal violence prevention person who is now going to help me with any type of personal crime.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So lastly, and I'll leave you with this, Victim Rights Week is something that's very important to me. It is actually observed nationally April 18th through the 24th of every year. Every year we do a series of events. Last year we had to step back because of COVID, but this year, luckily, Chief has given me the green light. So we're doing it as safe as we can and outdoor as much as we can. One of the things that I'd kind of like to invite you all to, on April 5th, the mayor will be doing a proclamation for Victim Rights Week for our city. On April the 13th at 12 o'clock in front of the police department, we will be planting pinwheels. We do this every year. We plant a pinwheel garden, and we always try to do it with a number that's representative of either child abuse victims in our jurisdiction or countywide with DSS, and we always partner with them. So the mayor will be coming over for that as well, and we'll be planting that. But we'd love to have some of you all join, you know, in that if you want to. It takes 30 minutes. It's very informal. We just dig little holes and put pinwheels in there, and it's just because we get so much traffic, people will wonder what those pinwheels are for, and there's a sign to explain to them what that's for. Later on in the week, Ozzy and I will be going to the retirement homes if they allow us back in. We've got a ton of information and goodies to give out to them. We'll also have the display at the Clemson Library, like we always do. So I invite you to go by there and pick up some goodies and some information. We'll also be having some table and events downtown Clemson, handing out to bring awareness to Sexual Assault Awareness Month, as well as Victim Rights Week. We'd love to have you for anything that you guys want to help us with.
Thank you.
And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Thank
Tell
you.
Ozzy hello.
Oh, I will.
Okay, we'll move right along to
Well,
who's
before
going up
she,
to Crime
before she
Watch.
goes, I just want to say real quickly, as you can tell, Deborah's one of the hardworking people here at Clemson PD. I know we worked a case a couple of weeks ago where she was intricately involved. It was a criminal sexual assault case on a minor. And she worked very hard with that victim. And as a result of that, we were able to make an arrest in that case. And that person is awaiting probably a lengthy prison sentence. So Deborah was definitely intricate in that case, and we really appreciate all her hard work. And if she makes any mistakes on what I present you, it's my fault because I missed it. So it's not her fault. So thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Next on the agenda is the Crime Watch. Is that yours, Chief?
That's going to be Sergeant Shauna Kelly, and I'm going to bring her in and allow her to talk. We had a little bit of discussion about crime watches and how to move forward and whether to do it online or in person. And some of you may see neighborhood watch signs in your neighborhoods that are really old, and we don't know who those people are anymore. And I know Kevin, who was on the line, was passionate about this as well. So Sergeant Kelly is another one of our hardworking folks, and you should be able to talk now. Shauna, go ahead.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Ma'am.
You can. Okay, thank you. This is my first official Zoom meeting, so you'll have to forgive me. Like Chief said, I'm Sergeant Kelly. I've been here for about 20 years now. I'm the support services sergeant, so I'm over the all of the support staff here, which includes detention and the jail, our records office. Ms. Shockley and I work close together, our SRO, our ID people, and I think I said dispatch, I'm not sure. Deborah and I do a majority of the community events here together, like National Night Out and the Victims' Rights Week she was talking about. She's nice enough to invite me to those and let me help with her with those. So I don't have too much for y'all tonight. Just the if you guys want to do a neighborhood watch, there are resources available online. One of them is usaonwatch.org. But if you Google neighborhood watch, you can see a lot of those. Most of those cost money. You have to pay a membership and things like that. So that's up to you. But you can do it on your own. Just if you have an HOA, or even if you're just a regular neighborhood, you can just organize on your own and have different people in charge of it. You make your own schedules. The police department would just be a liaison to help you with things if you had questions. We would not do the organizing or anything. We would definitely attend meetings if you wanted us to every once in a while, maybe. But the actual planning and running would be left up to whoever in the neighborhood wants to do it. I believe you're okay to get signage if you do it. But again, that would be something that the HOA or whatever y'all fall under would have to pay for to have done. But pretty much all you need to do is just get a group of people together, maybe have like a chair and a co-chair. I have some materials. I talked briefly to Mr. Dull. I can't remember if we emailed or phone called, but I do have his email. I have some examples of some things that I can scan and email him. But it would just be a matter of y'all having a system in place, however many members you want. Chief and I had kind of briefly discussed a way for y'all to call in stuff if need be. We talked about an email system or a phone system where you guys would kind of be like us and have a number. And so instead of you having to roll off all your information like a normal caller would be, you could just say, this is Crime Watch member from number whatever from this neighborhood, and then let us know what's going on. You would definitely want to make sure that your people understood to be safe when they're out there. I talked to another officer that runs, that kind of does the same thing that I do. And he said that he recommends, especially if you have an HOA, that maybe you get some kind of legal disclaimer, kind of like our ride along forms that we have here that says if I get hurt participating in this, I'm not going to sue the neighborhood. Those are some things you might want to think about. And then just be able to set up meetings and get your members, and we'll be happy to help in any way we need to. We do, I think we talked, maybe Mr. Dole and I talked briefly about Nextdoor. You guys can go on there and join us. I think Chief and Deborah know more about that than I do. I have access to it, but I think Chief's the one that posts on it most of the time. So, but that is a resource for you if you want to be a member of our Nextdoor and see what we're putting out there. So I can send that flyer as well. We have a couple of hang tags that we use. I think Deborah had talked about them too, but one's for your house and one's for your car. It basically lays out, don't leave your doors unlocked, don't leave your keys in your car, don't leave valuables out. The home one is more aligned with, make sure you've got good lighting, things like that. If you think somebody's been in your house, don't go in first, call us. I also do RAG classes, and the one thing I usually tell them is, as an officer, I would much rather come to something and have to clear your house than you walk in on something and come to a way different scene. So that just has tips like that on them. Like I said, I can scan and email all these to whoever would like to have them. I don't know who's spearheading the neighborhood watch part of this, but I'd be glad to do that. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Shauna, can we get together on that? I've got a couple things I want to bring up, but I don't want to, I'm not prepared right with that. I want to talk to you about it first.
Yeah, that's fine. I think I sent you, I think we've traded emails. I'm not really sure. But I do have your phone number from when I had called you initially. So I can call, I have to be at the school tomorrow. So I won't be in the office till about 2:30 or so. Can I just call you sometime later tomorrow, or is that too soon?
No, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I just had one question. Does it typically work where there's one person who's kind of a captain of the watch group? And
yeah,
so,
generally that's what you would do. That's what I meant by like a chair and a co-chair. So you would have two people in charge that would like make the decisions of, when you were going to patrol, how you were going to do it. My suggestion would also be if you're to make sure that these people, especially if they're doing it at night, I would be careful on any wording, but I would make sure they at least had like you can buy the armbands like runners have that are reflective, if that makes sense. So if they're out at night, people can see them.
And is there any training that can be provided so that people have a clear understanding of what they can and cannot do as private citizens in this capacity?
I will have to do some research on that, and I can do that and then pass it along to Mr. Dole whenever we meet, if that's okay.
At the very least, we could train on, what to look for and how to report it,
Yeah.
and how to remain safe while doing so, and that kind of stuff. So there are some guidelines out there for that. So at the very least, we could put that together if asked.
Anybody else have any questions?
Chief, you had mentioned previously the cityprotect.com website, and when we look at that, it still lists proactive policing and like foot patrol and business checks. I mean,
We're battling with the company.
Okay.
When we have a different level of access when we go to it, and I can see all of the crimes, but then when I go into it as a citizen, I'm seeing exactly what you're seeing. So I know Deborah is dealing with that. She's been dealing with that company. It's getting to the point where we're going to stop giving them our information at some point and say we're not paying for it anymore, because they haven't fixed it yet.
Okay, that may be helpful with Crime Watch for neighborhoods to be able to see that information. So
it is a very useful tool, and that's why I'm not happy with the fact that it's not working. So
thank
Well, and that's why I didn't, I didn't bring it up because I knew it wasn't working at this point, so. But that is when it is working or we get something different, that's a resource that y'all could use too, just to see what's going on and where it's going on.
This is Eunice. I'm a member of the homeowners association in my neighborhood, the board, and I'm just wondering if a neighborhood watch could also be. I don't, as far in 20 years, I'm not aware that Camelot's ever had a neighborhood watch, but I'm just wondering if it could be just oriented toward get to know your neighbors and watch out for your neighbors. So, for example, when I go on vacation, I tell my neighbors I'm on vacation. If you see something taking out the furniture, call the police. So I'm wondering if instead of focusing on patrols or armbands, if it could just focus on everybody try to meet 5 people that live near you and tell them whatever you feel comfortable telling them, like my babysitter comes at 3 o'clock and brings my son, or, getting to know each other and watching out the people who live near you. Is that also something neighborhood watches do instead of a patrol or a?
No, ma'am, they're usually generally steered towards actual patrol. On that point, with the chief's permission, what I can do is I do safety talks for the churches and the school here. So that's something that I usually just kind of tweak depending on the audience that I have. So I don't have a problem doing that. And that's exactly what these door tags that I was talking about has on them, about what not to do. Like when you're going on a trip, be aware of your neighbors. Like you might not speak to them, but if you know what your neighbor drives and he goes to work at 6 o'clock in the morning and there's a strange car at their house at 9, that doesn't belong there. So you've at least reached out to that point with those neighbors so that you guys are watching out for each other. And then things like don't post on social media when you're on vacation, things like that. So as I said, with the chief's permission, I have no problem doing that, because I have not done anything, as Ms. Shockley was saying. We've had a very lean year this year. I haven't done any community events since last March. So that's why we're so excited about April.
But Eunice, I think your point is well taken. I think what you're talking about is more, neighborly responsibilities. But again, it all depends on how comfortable you are with your neighbors and what kind of information you impart on them. Some people don't feel as comfortable telling their neighbors certain things. So we definitely can incorporate that, and even through your homeowners association, that could be something that's fostered in that venue as well. But as long as your neighbors and know who to call when you see something that doesn't look right, and how to report it so that we can go investigate it and find out, is it supposed to be going on? Yeah, Eunice is on vacation, but Eunice may have had somebody come to her house to do some work. And, maybe they're there illegally. So it's just, that kind of information needs to be imparted to us as well. So.
Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you, Shauna. I appreciate
You're welcome. Chief, did you want me to go ahead and cover the concealed carry?
We're good. That's the next, we're going to discuss the bike law discussion, and then we'll do the concealed carry discussion. So if you want to just hang on.
Sure.
So Margaret, with your permission, we'll move on to the bike law.
Yes, sir. That's great.
Okay, so one of you asked to discuss the bike laws here in South Carolina.
I would be the one.
And one of the things I wanted to point out in the most, I think, I know you asked, Margaret, and I'm guessing as to why you asked, but pretty much in the state of South Carolina, bicyclists must abide by all traffic laws, just like motorists. So if you're riding a bicycle in South Carolina and you come up on a stop sign or a red light, you have to stop. Now, with that said, there is a provision in the red light statute that allows a moped or a bicycle rider to proceed on through the red light. And I'll read it to you. It says, notwithstanding any other provision of law, if a driver of a motorcycle or moped or a bicycle rider approaches an intersection that is controlled by a traffic control device, the driver may proceed through the intersection on a steady red light only if the driver or rider has as the case may be, comes to a full and complete stop at the intersection for 120 seconds and exercises due care as provided by law, otherwise treats the traffic control device as a stop sign and determines it's safe to proceed. So if a bicyclist comes up to a red light, as long as they make a complete stop, are there for at least 2 minutes, and they see it's safe to proceed, they can proceed on through the intersection. That's the only provision that I can find in the statute that allows them to go through a traffic control device. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss on that, Margaret?
I had a situation, and I probably would have been clearly at fault, but I left my house and I was going to go to Publix. So I crossed over 123 and I got down to the bottom of the hill to where the red light is to turn right to like go into the side entrance to Publix. Well, I went to turn right and then a bicycle just came out of nowhere and the light was green. And I mean, he could have T-boned me. So I'm thinking, okay, as the driver, it scared me. So I didn't look for that person because you're looking for a car, not a bicycle. So I kind of think it works. I wish that bicyclists, because they're so unprotected of what will happen to them. So I wish that, that they would take some personal responsibility too, and kind of slow down when you get to things like that. Because even when a light turns red with me, I don't just jump through the intersection. I kind of hesitate, to make sure nothing's coming or anything. But it just kind of, I don't know who would have been at fault, probably me for turning right and then him T-boning me. But that's just something that made me bring up this bicycle issue.
Well, in that situation, I will say the law, if they are in a bike lane or in their rightmost side of the lane, they have the right of way moving forward just like a car would. And if you're making a right turn in front of them, then you would probably be at fault
Right.
if you cut them off because they have the right of way to go forward. So there is a statute specifically talking about that, and one that also tells drivers that they have to maintain a safe distance from a bicyclist that's on the rightmost side of the road traveling in the same direction, and have to maintain a safe distance away from them. And a lot of drivers are not used to that, and they come up on the bicyclist and there's a car coming the opposite direction and they don't give them enough room, and sometimes the bicyclist gets the short end of the stick on that one, and actually the driver's at fault because they didn't maintain. So they've got to slow down. If they can't get over to give that bicyclist a safe distance, they have to slow down and wait for that oncoming traffic to go by before they go around the bicyclist.
Right. It's kind of like the pedestrian has the right of way too, but it just kind of like, it just made me pause to think, okay. But and with that said, I think bicyclists need to be more conscious too of their surroundings and knowing that they don't have that protection like a person in a car does, that it's not going to be good if something like this happens. So that's my only thing, but I'm glad you cleared that up. I appreciate it.
Well, the only thing that I could say, I know I have to do a little more research here in South Carolina, but I know in Florida, the Department of Transportation put a lot of literature out on bicycle safety for bicyclists as well as drivers, and did a little bit of an educational campaign to kind of keep people from getting seriously hurt. Because I know we had a lot of bicyclists in Florida that were getting hit by vehicles, seriously hurt and died. So it is definitely something, and that is something that's being discussed in the Clemson Next groups, especially the transportation groups, because there are a lot of streets, a lot of roads here in Clemson that are not conducive for bicyclists to be on the roadway with vehicles. And there's some discussions there as how do we move forward? It's very dangerous, especially if it's children or young adults that are in the roadway riding the bikes to and from. A lot of times these roads depending on what neighborhoods they're trying to get to, they're extremely dangerous. So how do we get around that? Do we put bicycle paths and walkways that are not traditionally with the road separately when we're putting neighborhoods in, that kind of stuff? Those are the types of things that they're discussing in those groups.
All righty. Y'all have any questions on the bicycle discussion?
I will, this is Eunice, I'll just say I'm a person who bikes, commutes to work by bike sometimes, and leisure and to church and so on. And yeah, we have a lot of roads that don't have bike lanes. The Green Crescent Trail discusses that too. I volunteer for them. And I would say the bikers I know are always very aware of the cars, but as you said, there's not so much protection. And one thing we know statistically is when there is a bike lane, it's not just safer for the biker, it's safer for the driver. So whether that's a bike lane on the road, like down on 193 there, or off the road, it is safer for the pedestrian, the driver, and the biker if there's a sidewalk in a bike lane.
All righty. Anybody else? Okay, then we'll move on to open carry discussion. Chief?
Yes, ma'am. And I'm going to share my screen here. Member Robinson asked to discuss this. If you're not aware, there is a current bill going through the legislature to allow people in South Carolina who have a legal concealed carry permit to openly carry their firearm if they choose to do so. And this is the bill I'm showing you here. It's already passed. I think the House or the Senate, one of the two, it's passed, and it's in the other part of legislature for consideration to pass. And right here you can see it's being deemed the Open Carry with Training Act. It's amending the existing laws that are on the books, and it basically redefines what a concealed weapon is. And that said, it may be openly carried on one's person. It makes amendments to different provisions of the law to allow for the open carry. And again, it's only for people who legally have a concealed carry permit. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out is the current law does allow for concealed carry, and in this amendment to the law will be for open carry as well. Any employer or owner of a property or manager of a property from prohibiting people from carrying concealed or open a firearm as long as it is properly posted on the property or the business. So this part of the statute here explains how and in what manner the sign that you would put on your business has to be. Now, there's also in the law, and it's not specifically posted here, but in I think it's 2331-210, there's a list of locations that concealed carry people cannot carry their firearms. It's prohibited by law. One of them is where federal law doesn't allow it, but then there's also a bunch of others. It also prohibits a concealed carry person from consuming alcohol while armed. So those provisions are still in place, and they would still apply to people that would openly carry. So I wanted to point that out. One thing of concern though, and I'm still waiting on some kind of legal guidance. If you look at section C right here, where we're talking about the signage, if you want to place a sign at a business that does not have a door that you're going to walk through, they put provisions in here of how big that sign has to be. So as you can see here, it has to be 36 inches wide by 48 inches tall in size. So what I'm trying to find out is, does that mean a business that has a patio or a deck or something like that that doesn't have a door that you would walk through to get onto that deck, put a sign this large on it in order for it to be legal? I think we had a local business here that went through this a couple of years ago. It was called Backstreets, and you can Google it, where the owner put a sign up for concealed carry, prohibiting concealed carry in the business. And I believe the owner put a little bit of a sarcastic remark on the sign as well. And I think the NRA stepped in and a bunch of others stepped in, and they had this law passed that basically prohibited you from putting anything other than what this law allows you to put on the sign. But then it also created these very large and, you know, for a business that has a patio like It's Your Wiener or Back Streets or many other businesses, putting a sign this large at the front of the business is kind of ridiculous. I think with this sign, the intent for this sign was for a large open business, say, you know, a concrete construction yard or something like that, and you're coming through a gate versus coming through a doorway into a business. I think that's what the intent was for this type of a sign, because it needs to be that large for people to see it. But there's not a lot of direction there. Regardless, every property owner has the right to refuse service. A business owner has the right to refuse service to anyone. So if someone with an open carry walks on to a patio or bar and they want that person removed, they can call the police department and ask us to ask them to, well, they can ask them to leave. If they refuse to leave and we get there, we can ask them to leave. And if they don't want to leave, we can effect an arrest for that. So that those provisions still apply for all the different laws. And if you're interested in looking it up, if you go to the legislature site, you can look it up and see what it's talking about there. Some of the areas that just off the top of my head that I'm remembering, that you can't carry a concealed weapon and you wouldn't be able to carry an open carry weapon is a school, some of those other protected locations that are in the statute. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, so Chief Campos, I'd asked that this be put on the agenda because I was curious as to how you might,
Lisa, you're
or
freezing up on us. Can you
if
repeat
this
that?
is passed, I think it's, it was bound to happen at some point,
Yep.
right? Can you hear me
Start
now?
over.
Is it okay? I asked for this to be put on the agenda because I think it is sitting now with the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it seems like it's likely maybe to pass. And I was wondering if there were any considerations or discussions going on between law enforcement in the city with some of the property owners or establishments as to how this might be handled. You know, in a typical community, maybe this doesn't raise a lot of red flags, might not be that big of a deal, but in a college town, and given the number of people that come to our town from various places, you know, any given weekend in the fall and different times, you know, it could be a situation where things could get out of hand. And so just kind of wondering how our community might be getting itself prepared, you know, how we would address situations that could arise.
I do know that our administrator is closely following this, and we're closely following this because we have to be concerned about public property, parks, those types of things. And do we need to bring this before council to enact an ordinance or something to put signage up in these locations so that we don't have people openly carrying out firearms in a park or something like that? Because as I understand it and what I've been told thus far, a municipality would have the right to prohibit the concealed or open carry of a firearm on some of those properties. As far as the individual businesses, when I met with the local downtown bar owners 2 weeks ago to reiterate what the current COVID emergency ordinances are and changes in the governor's ordinance were, we had this discussion at the end about, you know, it's probably going to pass and how are you going to move forward? And overwhelmingly, most of them were taking the position that we have the right to refuse service to anyone. And we know that if you're in possession of a firearm, you can't drink. So the minute that they see somebody who has a firearm, they know has a firearm, touches alcohol, their intention is to kick them out. And that's overwhelmingly what most of them said. They also indicated that, you know, most of their clientele, in their opinion, wouldn't participate in this type of activity. But again, you never know. They really don't know how many people are carrying them concealed. Right now, they could walk in and, you know, they're not wanding anybody, so they're not going to know that they're having to have a firearm on that person. I'm told of a few incidences where a skirmish broke out and then a firearm fell out, and staff wind up recovering it later. You know, those were anomalies that they dealt with. And then, quite frankly, that's how I found out about the issue that Backstreets went through when I brought it up, because they informed me of what the sign would have to be for their patio area and how ridiculous it was. So we've had some of these conversations. Some people ask us sometimes, well, how is law enforcement to deal with this? As a matter of fact, before this went through the first part of the legislature, I got a phone call from a couple of the local representatives that asked my opinion of how I feel about an open carry law. You know, I have mixed emotions or mixed feelings about it because, you know, there's two sides to it. Right now, the way the concealed carry law is, whether you're legally concealing a firearm or not, I don't know if you have, me as a police officer, I don't know if you have a firearm on you. The fact that you're openly carrying a firearm and I can see it, I know now you have a firearm. So I have a little bit of a better perspective of what could potentially happen in that situation. Now, if you're a card carrying concealed firearms permit holder and you've gone through all of the training and everything to have a firearm, more than likely you're not going to engage in activity that's going to be risky for the most part. Now, are there anomalies? Sure. But I'd much rather know you have a gun on you, or if I pull a car over and you tell me you have a gun in the car, I'd rather know that first in interacting with you than uncover it surprisingly during our encounter, because things are probably not going to go very well at that point because I have to protect myself. But if you're telling me you have it ahead of time and I know that you have it, then I can do what I think I need to do to protect myself and others. So that's where my mixed emotions come in when I talk about that, because I'd much rather know that you have one than not have one.
As a retired, as a retired officer, you know, we,
I got a question.
George Bush passed a law that we could carry it even as retired officers anywhere in the United States. My comfort zone is to keep it concealed. That's where, because I mean, nobody ever knows I have a weapon on me, but I'm not too sure about this open carry, so to speak, but I just hope that, you know, they don't do away with any kind of way to protect yourself. But I can understand the general, I think it's a choice with people, what they choose to do, and it's their business. And I respect the businesses that would say, you know, I'm not comfortable with you having a weapon on you or anything like that, but that's just where I stand on it. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, Kevin. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Chief, I just had a couple things. Like Margaret said, we don't want to limit where we can carry. If we have laws that the person can carry, but we put all these restrictions and signage on everything in town, what's the sense of even saying you can carry a gun? Because, okay, that's the end of that. Here's the point I wanted to make about the university. Okay, so what laws do they have enacted? The students on campus, and then they leave campus and they come downtown and they're just going to the dollar store to buy something and they come back. Where are the guidelines of carrying a gun and not carrying a gun in that walk?
So as I understand it, the students are not allowed to have firearms on campus, period. And I believe there's a law on the books that says you can't have a firearm on at a school. So that was one of the things I mentioned earlier. It's not just a parochial school, it's also the colleges. I don't see Ryan reacting any differently, being the student representative on here. Ryan, do you know anything different?
I actually do have a comment on that. I didn't want to interrupt.
So if we refer to, give me just 2 seconds real quick. It's 1623-420. That is your section on possession of firearms on school property. Now, as far as a student is concerned, it actually, you can't have any kind of firearm, handgun, long gun, anything like that. Now, with that being said, so as described in the concealed weapons permit, which is Article 4, Chapter 31, Title 23, if the student at that point then has a concealed weapons permit, you can keep it locked in the glove box, or like any other, like you would carry on any other school with a concealed weapons permit. But it doesn't really define the one thing, and I was going to ask this question separately. It doesn't really define very well if I'm going to pass through, let's say I'm going from, the boat ramp at Twin Lakes over towards High Point, and I'm going to drive through and I'm going to go to eat at Chick-fil-A. And the closest route for me to drive through is going directly through campus. What it says is, it says that you cannot carry on your person without the express permission of authorities in charge of the institution on the premise or property. Now, if we are driving through the university from 2 outside locations and staying on a state road with no intention to stop, are you technically on university property at that point? You're technically in their jurisdiction, where you own university property because you're not stopping and getting off in one of their parking lots or something like that. So that's a separate consideration that I have.
Chief, can I chime in for a minute?
Go ahead.
I'm going to lower my hand. I don't think this hand raising thing works very well. So as far as I'm concerned, the law doesn't give anybody else the ability to carry a weapon. It just gives the people who already have the permission to carry the weapon the ability to carry it in a different manner. Is that correct?
It's only people who are permitted that can carry it openly.
Right. So it's the people who already have the permission to carry the weapon gives them the ability to carry in a different manner. And speaking and to Kevin's point, as a business owner, local business owner here, Kevin, when you were talking about posting a whole bunch of signs, it's not the police department. The police department does not have any jurisdiction over my property. If I want to choose to allow somebody to open carry in my property, in my business, I can allow that. The police department don't have that jurisdiction. If I don't want them to carry a weapon in my establishment, then I have the right to post a sign. I don't know if that helps you out. And I believe that there's statutes that will address Ryan's issue about transportation, because there's different laws about transporting firearms versus open carry and concealed carry. But I don't believe that these are police issues when we're talking about private entities, private businesses. Chief Campos can't come into my business and tell me whether I should or should not allow somebody to carry a weapon. And this law doesn't change anything. This law has nothing to do with the Chief Campos. This law just allows people who are already authorized to carry a weapon, either carry it on their hip with their shirt tucked in or their shirt over it. That's pretty much almost as simple as it gets.
So Ryan, to kind of address what you asked, I don't work on campus. I know that a lot of campuses are opposed to firearms being on the campus. I know in Florida, if you have concealed carry, you could keep it in your car, but you couldn't carry it with you anywhere on campus. Now, I think also in Florida, there's some language that in the law that talks about traversing through the property. And here it doesn't appear to address that. So it's either something that the police department, the university police department is going to have to make a decision on how they're going to enforce that. And hopefully, and I know a handful of them over there, they usually are pretty reasonable about it. But just because you're saying that you're traversing through doesn't necessarily mean they're just not going to do anything about it. If they see you, making turns and, you're not just sticking the 93, you're turning down by the stadium and then you're turning back around. I mean, that's not traveling through. That you're off the beat. You're not taking a direct route. So that's a judgment call they're probably going to have to make. And if they charge somebody with it, then that's a decision that's going to have to be made in the court as to whether that's an allowable use or not. So there's something that's probably going to have to be litigated if it's not specifically stated in the law.
Chief,
And I guess,
go ahead, Ryan.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I guess I sort of respond back to that. I think it's pretty clear as far as students on campus. If you got a concealed weapons permit, then you have to carry in accordance with the concealed weapons permit, which means it needs to be in the car, needs to be in a locked vehicle, in the glove compartment or center console, or behind the driver's seat with an integral fastener container. I guess what the other question kind of double back on was, it doesn't really apply to your apartment. I guess I was just curious on your take on that, because you got a guy that goes turkey hunting on in Fance Grove over there, and he's going to run through and get some Chick-fil-A for lunch. Technically, you're not supposed to have a long gun on the campus of Clemson University. So do you expect that individual to drive completely around the jurisdiction of Clemson University, or do you expect that individual to stay on a state road where he's not technically on the property or the premise?
I think that's going to be a question for the university and how they want to enforce that. And they have the right to chime in any way they want. It's one of those things that, firearms can be used very deadly. We've seen an example of that this past week, as a matter of fact. And what's the chances of something violent and tragic happening on campus like that if you allow people to openly and regularly do the activities that you're talking about? More than likely what you're talking about, and from what I've seen in my very short time here, that's not a common occurrence. So maybe a case-by-case basis, but given the right amount of circumstances during a time where, say, the university invites a controversial speaker to speak on campus, how many people are going to claim they're going to go pheasant hunting or something like that to enable to bring a weapon onto campus? So it's all a moving dynamic at that point.
And I guess
a point to that, Chief, is it also the form of transportation? Is it only in a vehicle if you were walking, so to speak, or a bicycle or a motorcycle? Is it designated a form of transportation?
No, but there's specific language in the law that talks about how a weapon is to be considered either concealed or unconcealed while in a vehicle. And I think that's where Ryan was going with his question.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
This is Eunice. So as the mental health counselor, I just want to point out, I think what changes in the state when we have open carry is there's a significant portion of the population that would be frightened if they saw a weapon of any sort, a police officer with a weapon or anyone with a weapon, a hunter. So there are businesses that people, and as you know, the data says 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 women have been victims of assault, right? So there's a significant portion of the population who has a trauma history, and when they see a weapon in a business or on the street downtown or in a park or wherever, they're not going to go there. So I think in terms of policing, that means the police officers just have to be aware of the fear level of our trauma victims and our people who are afraid of weapons. And this is not a small minority. This is a huge population, goes up. And that has an effect on interacting with the public. That's my concern as a mental health counselor, is my clients going out into the world and seeing weapons. Sure, anytime I could be somebody with a hidden weapon, but it's not triggering my trauma people. But when I see a weapon, they're triggered, they're frightened, and we act differently when we're frightened.
Chief, I'd say I agree with Eunice on that. That perception is reality. However, we all have to realize that it doesn't change the scope of the law for our officers, because somebody with a mental disability might have a reaction to it. Doesn't mean that our police officers can step out of their role and violate what that person is allowed to do constitutionally.
Any other comments?
If no more comments, we'll move on to the board members' open discussion.
Yes, Chief, I had a question, a follow-up question on the traffic report. There were 146 traffic tickets. Do we have any idea where that was mainly parking violations, or there are a significant number of speeding violations or red light violations? Do you have any idea? I'm not asking for a specific breakdown.
I'll try to pull a breakdown and email it to you all. I don't know that off the top of my head. And I don't believe those numbers are counting parking citations, but I'll
Okay.
double check on that.
Okay, and my main reason for bringing that up is personally, and also other residents reporting, traffic coming into the city now on 123 from Oconee County, especially before it reaches College Avenue and is forced to slow down, where the Dockside project is, and residents trying to enter, exit Holiday East, Holiday West there. I mean, that it's a very dangerous spot there with the construction and visual situations there with the speed coming into the city. I just wanted to comment on that.
No, I agree. I myself try to get through there during the day with that higher volume of traffic, and it is a challenge. I've had conversations with DOT this past week about some other things along 123. And one of the things they brought to my attention was they want to put a median down the middle of 123 to prevent cross traffic from occurring. And there was a large push locally for that not to occur. And every time we talk to them, they keep bringing that back up again. Well, that's what's going to solve it. It'll solve some of it, but it's not. The problem we have, in my opinion, is the volume of traffic that's coming through. And until we're able to alleviate that or manage that better, I don't know how we're going to, do that. And to your point, it's unfortunate, but how else are people going to get out from some of those side streets unless some more traffic signals are put in to kind of help that? And it's really going to depend on the volume of traffic that's coming from either way. This morning, our public works crew had to repair a sewer pipe on 133 between 123 and the train trestle. They scheduled it for overnight work because they knew it would be a traffic snarl, and their goal was to be done by 6 o'clock. Well, they didn't get done until 7:30, 7:45. So prior to that, 133 was backed up. I wouldn't be surprised all the way up to Daniel High School. I mean, that's how messed up it got there. And there was a problem with the light, and we could not manually control the light. So we had to actually get out there and physically direct traffic to try and to alleviate the traffic problem there. So that alone, that just morning traffic alone was a nightmare.
Thank you.
Chief, a lot of this, excuse me, go ahead, Dr. King.
No, I was just thanking him for his comment.
I hear this, I try to plan my day. I try to plan my day on that traffic. And I think if a lot of people would do that, they wouldn't be so stressed about the traffic because it's not going anywhere. I don't look for any changes or anything like that. If they put a median down the middle, it'll be a nightmare. So you just have to choose another route to go or pick a different time.
Well, any other board discussion or topics? Lisa, did we answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Eunice, go ahead.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
Fourth.
Okay. Well, that concludes our meeting, I'm assuming, because we got a quorum that said to adjourn.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a good week. Thank
you all. Be safe with the tornadoes out there.
Stop the recording, Chief.